Hello Mayhem Makers, I'm Mindy with Quilting Mayhem. Welcome to week 3 of Mindy's Mystery Sew Along. We're getting to what may be kind of tricky. It's going to be a very unique looking unit that you put together. So it's actually going to look like this. So notice this one has what we would have labeled by now, like a main fabric and accent fabric. And this green is my background. So just to kind of keep you up to speed as I try to explain what's going to happen. So you made a whole bunch of half square triangles last week, right? And you probably have piles of half square triangles and then the leftover squares. So that's what we're going to work with. We have, say, these are the two fabrics that I had partnered up, right? So grab the squares that you had partnered and then grab your half square triangles that you created. So you created some that used both the fabric, and then you have some of each with background, okay? So pay attention, hold on. It may get a little confusing, but it'll make sense in the end, because what's going to happen is it's kind of making, well, it's making the same block, but with two different variety of these fabrics. So you're going to create more piles. I'm sorry, all the piles this time. So what will happen is, say I want to work with this main fabric. We're going to call this my main. So we're going to grab the pile of these and we're going to separate it in two. So this, actually this is both, just to add it and make it confusing. This is A and B. So you need two of these. So you're actually going to separate those into two piles. All right. Set one aside because we're not going to make that one yet. And then you're going to grab the ones with the background. So you're going to need two of these, your pile of your main with your background, all right? Take the other pile, that's the, what we would call the accent in the background, put that with your other two that you set aside that are A and B together, okay? So this pile, go put it aside. Once you're done with this one, you can then use these leftover fabrics to do the same steps. All right, so we're going to lay these out. Now I know directional fabric, but it's okay because we're doing two. We can actually make all our fabric go the same direction. This is going to be magical. What you will end up doing is taking these fabrics and you're going to cut them in half on the diagonal. So any of them that are directional, you can tell it's that kind of day. Stack them so they're all going the same direction and then cut them all the same, because you're going to need that, having them go two different directions for when you separate them around and lay them back out, and I'll show you. Okay, so cut these into triangles because you're going to need triangles for what we're doing. All right, so I'm going to move this so you can see a visual. All right, so down here I'm laying it out. Let's see if I can get you up and into the whole thing. Maybe. So we have our half square triangle that is your main and your accent together. You have your half square triangle that is your main and your background, and another half square triangle that's your main and your background. Notice mushrooms all facing one way. The other ones that are facing the other way, set those aside, because you're just going to do two of these that look exactly the same except for your mushrooms and what direction they're going. So same thing. Find your triangles that are facing the same way if you have directional. If you don't, doesn't matter. You're just going to have these with the mushrooms, your main on this bottom row, and then these triangles here going in these upper corners, and then your other fabric are down here in these two corners. So if I pull these triangles away, you'll see these are just sitting next to each other in a diagonal row, and then we're tucking in. And what's going to happen is we're going to sew across this way. So I'm going to start like with number one, take this triangle, flip it onto here. I'm going to line them up and I'm going to sew my 1/4 inch seam. All right. So I'm going to go to the machine. I'm going to sew these up and I'll be back to show you what they look like, because I'm not going to bore you with watching me sew and iron. You guys know how to sew and iron, so just hold on. I'll be right back. All right, so I'm going to move this. Here we go. So we have this unit, half square triangle with triangle. This center unit, half square triangle, triangles on either end. So make sure those angles are going the opposite directions. And the bottom one, half square triangle with triangle. So we're still working on making kind of this diagonal row. What will happen is then you just take the top one, flip it to the middle, make sure you pin this intersection, all right? Because you want that to line up. And if you're a new sewist, you could pin beginning and end. You are going to have an overlap. You're going to have what I call a dog ear, and you want that. This is what you want. So don't scooch it and make it line up at the end. You need that overlap for that seam allowance. And then over here, if this piece bothers you, you can take your scissors, clip that little dog ear off. And the same thing is going to happen over here. This is going to overlap just a little bit. And then we will sew the top to the middle and the bottom to the middle and have our unit. So I'm going to sew that together and we'll show you what it looks like. All right, so here's what you've got, this long unit that you sew together. All right, so notice this one. So we have what I would call the mushroom as your main, and then the pink is your accent. So there's more of the mushroom in this strip than of the pink accent, and then the two background. All right, so what will happen from your stack of what you started with is you're going to make two that look like this from the first pile. Those will be done, set those aside, and then you're going to make what I would call the opposite. So you're going to make the other units, which will then look like this. So now your accent, you have 5 of them, and then this main, there's 3. So it's just the total opposite of what we did. And that's what you're going to do with everything. So you're going to have 2 sets from each that are going to look like this. All right, hopefully this makes sense. This kind of clarifies, because really they're the same thing, just changing up how the fabric is laid out of what becomes the main and what kind of becomes the accent. All right, so that's the goal with each of your sets of 2. And I'll show you just how to lay out the other one, just because it's really the same, but it kind of looks the opposite. So you have your half square triangle. That's both fabrics. I'll make sure I do this correctly. There we go. So here we're making this pink be center stage. So there we go. So we tuck it in over here. And then we have the mushrooms. Notice because we separated them by how they lay directionally, and because you're doing 2 sets, you're going to be able to get all your directional to go the same direction if you have directional. Hopefully you avoided it and you don't have to deal with any of that, and then it would just be like this little firefly print. You're just tucking it in, you don't care. All right, so your layout, once again, so you're gonna have, you know, 5 of these pink triangles and then 3 of the black mushroom type triangles. So however they look, lay it out this way and then sew it together, so then it magically looks like that. Okay, that's all we're doing. So just take your pairs, work 1 pair at a time, so you're not getting anything else messed up. Work a pair at a time, split them in the 2 piles so that you can make the 2 different layouts of your fabric, and then sew them all together. So you'll have 4 of these units, you know, 2 of one way and 2 of the other from each of those pairs that you start with. Set those aside for next week. We're almost there. We're getting to almost a block, and then we'll get to lay out. So hope you have a fabulous weekend. If you have any questions, because I know this might be a little confusing, please reach out, let me know. I'll help you with it, or if you need to come to the store, see me, or virtual chat, whatever you need, let me know. We'll get it taken care of so we can get to the end of laying everything out. All right, have an amazing time. Keep on stitching.